All right, folks, on Saturday, I had the opportunity to sit down one-on-one with Senator Ted Cruz from the great state of Texas. He was a keynote speaker at the Restoration Weekend down at the Breakers in Palm Beach. And we started off the interview by asking him about his experience so far. Limited time in the Senate. He has become a lightning rod for both sides and the media, of course. And here's what he had to say about that.
Well, I certainly didn't predict that it would be the whirlwind it has. It really has been a breathtaking year. And I think part of it is the challenges facing our country are extraordinary. And you know, I, for one, feel really privileged, blessed to have the chance to be serving at a time such as this, at a time when the challenges are just so grave.
Now, the media has seized upon you. Probably the only person where they did it quicker that I could recall is Sarah Palin. The second Sarah Palin was chosen as John McCain's running mate, she was a bad mom. She has a young child. How could she do both? I mean, they killed her from the beginning. But you, I mean, you've caught up and surpassed. It might have taken a little longer. But you were on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, and people saw a side of you. You said something negative about Obamacare. The audience applauded. Yet they call you the most hated man in America, the liberal media. So how would they reconcile something like that? I guess by ignoring the success you had on The Tonight Show, for instance.
Well, I will confess, being on the Tonight Show was a little surreal. When you walk out on the stage with Jay Leno, you're looking around going, what the heck am I doing here? It was very cool, though, because the guest that preceded me was Mariska Hargitay, who's on Law and Order. Sure. And I'm a huge Law and Order fan, so I thought that was very neat. And I was certainly, I was pleasantly surprised by the very warm reaction I got from the studio audience there in Burbank, California.
You know, that Wall Street Journal, NBC News poll where the Democrats claim that's what forced the Republicans to cave. It was a few weeks during the shutdown, and there were negatives in that poll, and both Barack Obama and Harry Reid had higher total negatives than you. But of course, that's something they'll never talk about.
Well, you know, I think there's a real divide between Washington, D.C. and the rest of the country. And I've said a lot of times, I think the biggest divide in this country is not between Republicans and Democrats. It is between entrenched politicians in Washington of both parties and the American people. There are a lot of politicians in Washington who just aren't listening to the American people, and people are frustrated. You take something like Obamacare. Millions of Americans have been speaking up saying, this is a train wreck, this is a disaster, this is killing jobs, this is forcing people into part-time work, and as we've been seeing in the last few weeks, this is taking away the health care of millions of Americans. And yet Washington hasn't been listening to them. And I think that's the frustration people feel all across this country, and that's something I hope will change.
Well, let me ask you, when Bill Clinton said what he said, urging President Obama to, even if he has to change the law, help these people, what did you feel? Did you feel vindication? Did you feel shock? What went through your mind?
Well, I think it was a very revealing comment. That Bill Clinton said that, to me, suggested that maybe he's looking for some distance, and in particular to try to distance Hillary Clinton from both President Obama and Obamacare. And I think that speaks volumes, that this thing isn't working, that nobody is defending it. And that was really a signal to an awful lot of Democrats. That the wheels are falling off of this thing, and we've started to see a lot more Democrats finally being willing to break with Obamacare to stop the partisan obstruction they've been engaged in, and to start, I hope, beginning to listen to the American people.
39 of them yesterday in the House. What does that signal to you? And what about that bill? I mean, does that go far enough? What is your ultimate goal is to do away with Obamacare, but can it be piecemeal, so to speak? And of course, the next question is, or the next fact to realize is, this, Harry Reid's never going to bring this up.
Well, you know, as John Adams said, facts are stubborn things. And the facts are Obamacare isn't working. I mean, it is, at this point, I actually think it is the essence of pragmatism to want to repeal Obamacare, because 3.5 years ago, maybe it was the case that reasonable minds could have differed, that some people might have believed maybe Obamacare would work. Today, nobody believes that. You can't look at the facts. When you've got over 5 million Americans who've had their health insurance canceled because of Obamacare, you've had 100,000 sign up and 5 million lose their health insurance.
Subpar insurance policies from bad apple insurance companies.
Well, you know, as subpar as the president might think they are, even more subpar is not having any insurance.
Sure.
when you've been canceled. And it's the classic illustration of liberalism and big government run amok, where people in Washington think they know better than you do about the health care you need, about the health care your family needs. I got to tell you, it is a great reminder of what it is we're fighting for when I go back to Texas, which I try to do every weekend. And all across the state of Texas, I hear Texans who come up to me, and you know, lately, more and more of them, they're scared. They're losing their health care. You know, you've got moms with kids with diabetes, with real health issues. You've got people who are just, they're frightened by what's happening. And what has happened to the Democratic partisanship is it has confronted the reality of the millions of Americans who are paying the price, who are facing real harms because of that.
The navigators. James O'Keefe went undercover and first in Texas and revealed that last week. He's got more coming. I just spoke to him today. This should be what Kathleen Sebelius said to John Cornyn about, convicted felons could have access, and then to see these navigators on tape telling people cheat, lie, steal. I mean, this should lead the news every single night, and this should be the end of the whole program. But of course, the media doesn't really want to talk about this.
No, that's exactly right. Let me say, God bless James O'Keefe. He does such a terrific job of simply shining the light in darkness, telling the truth. The great thing about what James does is he just runs a camera and lets people explain what they're doing. The navigators, you know, part of the problem with the left is for them it is about power. It is about the power of Washington to control your life, to control my life. And so the navigators are all about using taxpayer money to fund partisan operatives. And that's fundamentally corrupt. It's wrong. It's misusing the machinery of government. And what James has done is simply put on film that these folks understand they're partisan operatives. They're not engaged in anything other than trying to mobilize people to keep Democrats in power, to maintain their control over our lives.
Your eyes don't lie. Let me ask you this. Do you think it would help your cause and the Republicans' cause if you would go, I know you can't do it in the Senate, but if they would pass a bill? How about the 5 things that people like from Obamacare? Portability, you can't, pre-existing condition, close the donut hole, you could keep your kids on the insurance till they're 116, and just say, here's a bill, and pass that, and say, here, 1 sheet of paper, see the other 1,800? Whoosh. Wouldn't that help public perception?
Well, I agree with the philosophy you're talking about, that we should be talking proactively about health care reform to empower patients, to increase choice, to drive down costs and expand affordability and access. And in my view, right now we're at an interesting time because the Democrats are scrambling. They're like fleeing a sinking ship. And you see Democrats, what they're desperately looking for is right now not a way to fix the problem. They're just looking for a political Band-Aid. They're looking for something to cover their political rear ends, but frankly, they don't make a big enough Band-Aid to do that. And so you're seeing all of these bills that the White House is pushing, the Democrats are pushing, that have clever titles, things like, if you like your plan, you can really keep it.
For a year.
For a year.
Yeah, and then you're back in the same boat,
But none of these are going to work. This thing is fundamentally broken, and tinkering around the edges, sticking a Band-Aid on it's not going to fix the problem. The solution is to repeal it. Repeal it outright, to say, listen, it isn't working. As a simple, pragmatic, reasonable starting point, let's start over. And then what we ought to work on doing is reforming health care so that we expand competition. The first step we ought to take is allowing people to purchase health insurance across state lines. Create a national marketplace. What that does is it drives down cost and it increases choice. I mean, one of the things that's really at its very core most messed up about Obamacare is that it drives up cost. If you want to expand access, you want to drive costs down. Obamacare goes the other way. It drives up costs and reduces choice. The way to expand access is expand choice and drive down costs. That's what, as conservatives, we need to be talking about, is empowering you, not bureaucrats getting between you and your doctor.
And I love when he says you could buy a policy for your cell phone, the deductible on some of these policies. People won't even go to the doctor because they got to pay the first $5,000, $6,000, $7,000.
Right.
Yes, indeed. All right, that's part 1 of the Ted Cruz interview that we did down over the weekend, Saturday evening in Palm Beach at Restoration Weekend. And when we come back in the next segment, we will play for you the second part where he talks about Obama's abuse of power, and I bring up the I word, and he addresses the I word. The I word is not Imus. The I word is impeachment over abuse of power, not only over Obamacare, but also over him picking and choosing which laws to enforce aside from Obamacare, and which parts of which laws to enforce and which parts of laws not to enforce. You can't do that. That's unconstitutional. It's totally unconstitutional. Now, as an aside, this just in, keep your plan. You know, if you like it, you could keep it. That was untrue. I do not doubt that for a second. I believe to be a liar, you have to know that what you're saying is not true, and I believe absolutely. But there's more and more politicians and mainstream pundits now accusing the president of that. Senator Ron Johnson, Republican from Wisconsin, said those assurances were not slight exaggerations or innocent shadings of the truth. He said this in the Republican radio address over the weekend. And you have Liz Cheney. She used the L word in her appearance on Fox News Sunday. There's no question that he lied. And you have others that are coming out and saying it as well. It's absolutely irresponsible to believe that the president did not know. Now Charles Schumer, let's see. Actually, this is Kirsten Gillibrand. She said that we all knew plans would be canceled. We all knew plans would be canceled, and she said Obama should have been more specific, but she defended the promise because she said the law needed to be passed to ensure more people could get affordable health care. Do you understand what that means? She said the president should have been more specific, but we all knew plans would be canceled. But she defended what the president did, which was to lie. If the president knew plans would be canceled, and he's part of we all, and you say if you like it, you could keep it, meaning it won't be canceled, then she's admitting he lied. But she says he had a lie, as she said here. She defended the promise, which was a lie by her own definition, because she said the law needed to be passed to get more people affordable health care. So the ends justify the means. Very frightening. Very frightening. Hey, Senator Gillibrand, if it's okay for the president to lie about this because it's for the greater good, in your opinion, then what else could the president lie about as long as it's for the greater good, of course, in your opinion? Anything, Senator Gillibrand? Or are there limits to what you would stand for, even if it's for the greater good as you see it? This is dangerous, dangerous stuff. All right, we're coming back with part 2 of the Ted Cruz interview. And Coulter's still ahead today. Dr. Ben Carson, we interviewed him. We'll play that later on for you. All that and so much more coming your way